As a women's health professional, you already know how important menstrual cycle tracking is. But are you equipped to support your clients with complex cases? Do you know how to read complex menstrual cycle charts? Were you ever taught step-by-step protocols to deal with irregular bleeding patterns, abnormal cervical mucus, chaotic basal body temperatures, or progesterone issues? That's where FAMM comes in. The Fertility Awareness Mastery Mentorship Program is designed specifically for women's health professionals with busy practices. We've cut out all the fluff so we can be laser focused on what you need to serve your clients better. Registration is open now for the next class of FAMM. Classes start towards the end of October. Apply today at fertilityfriday.com/FAMMlive. That's fertilityfriday.com/FAMMLIVE. This is the Fertility Friday podcast, episode number 543. Today, I'm sharing another brand new episode in our FAMM Practitioner series. I'm sharing my interview with Emmy. And at the time that we're recording this, we are about 8.5 months deep into our FAMM program. And Emmy, who I'm interviewing today, is in the midst of her practicum. And she shares so many interesting aspects of her story in today's episode. Emmy has an interesting perspective on all things related to the menstrual cycle due to her work as a surgical technologist. So she has this interesting window into the medical side of things, and that has certainly led her to question the validity of kind of a medical-only approach. I suppose you could say that it's led her to see some of the limitations of relying exclusively on medicine. And one of the things that I've always shared my perspective when it comes to seeking support when you have a specific health issue, whether that be a specific issue related to your menstrual cycle, hormone health, fertility, thyroid health, etc., is that it's really important for all of us to have medical doctors. But the best results that I've seen with my clients occur when my clients have a team. And so the medical professionals represent certain members of that team, but there's times when it's also helpful to see a functional medicine provider, someone who is trained in root cause medicine. It's helpful to see someone who has a functional approach who also specializes in the specific issue that you have. It can also be helpful to work with a coach. So someone who specializes exclusively in fertility, if fertility is what you're struggling with, or whatever the specific issue is, an advocate, a fertility awareness educator, someone who can help you with a specific aspect of it and give you more time and attention that can ever be possible in your doctor's office. Some of us benefit from nutritionists. Some of us benefit from having acupuncture. Others see incredible benefits from body work, things like our Vigo therapy or Mercier, and the list really just goes on. Emmy also had a background in fertility awareness before she joined the FAMM program. So she also shares her perspective coming into the FAMM program already with fertility awareness knowledge and specific training in that area. So before we jump into today's episode, I want to share a little bit about Emmy. Emmy Poole is the woman behind She Is the Moon, a woman's wellness practice. She is a Maya abdominal practitioner and soon to be fertility awareness educator. Emmy also works as a surgical technologist and gets the unique perspective of seeing the inner workings of the body literally. This unique perspective has let her see things like adhesions, fibroids, misaligned uteruses, and so much more. It has made her even more passionate about Maya abdominal therapy and fertility awareness, in hopes to help women seek other options before deciding to take the surgical route. It is Emmy's goal to help educate women about their bodies, to teach them things we should have been taught, and to help them claim back their bodily autonomy through education and reconnecting with their bodies. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into today's episode. And I'm excited to be here today with Emmy. Emmy is one of our current FAMM practitioners. As we are recording this, we are towards the end of our program, actually. I think I just said in class that we have exactly 1 month left before our program officially ends. So I feel like this is a great time to chat, and you've kind of gone through the full gamut at this point. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. You are such a legend in the FAMM world. I'm so stoked.
Oh, you're so sweet. Well, I'm really excited to have you. And I mean, even before we started recording, I was thanking you for coming on the show because I know that not everybody necessarily is comfortable sharing their personal story. Of course, all of the listeners and myself, these are some of my favorite episodes. So I always love being able to facilitate these conversations. So with that said, I want to go ahead and jump in and ask one of my absolute favorite questions, which is, tell us about your first period. And I'd love just to hear a little bit about your story and your experience of what led you to this place now where you're wanting to dive into fertility awareness.
Yeah, my first period was probably around 11 years old. My poor mom, I love her to death, but she did not really educate me at all, or we actually didn't even talk about it at all. I didn't come to her, she didn't come to me. It was just kind of this like unspoken thing where honestly, like for the first like period or two, like I literally just used toilet paper because like I didn't know anything. And then I remember one day they were just like, pads appeared like in the bathroom. And so I was like, oh, I guess I like use these. So the beginning of my cycle or the introduction to it was not ideal. I don't blame my mom at all. It's like obviously a generational thing. She didn't really know how to go about it. So no hard feelings there. But it was pretty normal from what I can remember. I didn't have like crazy PMS. It was super heavy, but that seems kind of normal for that age. And it was pretty painful. I would like throw up every once in a while, but I kind of like grew out of that as I got older. I didn't go on HCs in high school. They were kind of forced upon me when I joined the Coast Guard in boot camp, just 19. Like I wasn't even sexually active. And they're just like, hey, you need to take these. And I was like, what? But like, you're young in the military, like you have to kind of do what you're said, like, or what you're told. So I didn't really ask any questions and I just kind of took them, but it kind of never really felt right. I would kind of just like stop taking them. And then when I became sexually active, I would take them again. And then if I didn't have a partner, I would stop taking them. And I really had an awful, awful experience on all types of birth control. And I've been on like every type. I've been on like 3 different pills. I tried the ring that goes inside. I've been on the copper IUD, which was horrific. And then the last thing I had was the implant that goes in the arm. I had one of those and then I got it replaced. And I was finally just like, I've had enough of this. None of this is working. I'm miserable. My periods are unpredictable. Like I've been just through too much with this. There's got to be a better way. And my friend's a nurse practitioner and I literally had her take it out at her house on her bed. She had never taken one out before. And I was just like, get this thing out of me. And that was the last time I was on HCs. And I don't know how. I always try to like go back to the moment when I found out about FAMM and I found out about your podcast and your book, Fertility, or the Fifth Vital Sign had just come out. And that just like opened my whole entire world and just blew my mind completely. Like it was honestly like God like placed it in my lap and I was like, here, there is a better way. You're right. So that's kind of the beginning of all this.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. I mean, it's a whole lot of information and a whole lot of years. I mean, what you described, being not having used birth control and then kind of having to use it as part of the Coast Guard and then trying all the things. About what duration of time was that? Like, was like, what age to what age? At what point did you get it out?
So 19 to about 32.
Okay.
Yeah. The pill was very on and off. Probably my mid 20s was like very on and off. And then when I was getting out of the military, I wasn't going to have any health insurance. And I was like, well, I guess I should try to find like a more long-term option. So that's when I tried the copper IUD, which I only lasted like 2 months. And then I did the implant on. And then at around 32, I was like, okay, I'm done.
Mm-hmm. What I do appreciate about the podcast is just, putting out those experiences, because I think that now we're past the time when it's controversial to talk about the pill. I feel like when I first started my podcast, so around 2014, I think at that time it was more of a thing that when you were talking out against the pill, people would get all upset and they would kind of, you know what I mean? Like, it's anti-feminist or you're discouraging women from using it or whatever the case. But at that time, people would say things like, well, if you talk about the side effects, you're going to dissuade women from using it. And the idea behind it is there's all these happy women that are just loving their experience with hormonal contraceptives, and it's all great. But what the research tells us is that about 50% of women come off of whatever pill they're on within a year. So your experience, I mean, it's not everybody tries everything and like finds that nothing works, but a lot of women have. And I've spoken to so many women in my programs over the years that have experiences similar to yours, where it was like, okay, well, I'll try this pill then. Okay, well, I'll try this one. Fine. The pills aren't working for me. I'll try the ring. Okay, that isn't working for me. I'll try the IUD. Fine. That didn't work for me. Let me try the implant, right? So although it might seem like this was kind of rare, it's not. So many women, there's a lot of women for whom the pill just does not agree with.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I feel. Like I've met maybe one or two women that are like, I've never had a problem with birth control, but like that's so few. It's crazy.
So since you were on a variety of different contraceptives, I'm just going to roll this into one question, which is, could you share a little bit about some of the side effects you experienced, or what were some of the worst ones? I mean, I guess the question under that is, what prompted you to keep switching and what prompted you to eventually stop?
Right. So the pill just made me, I didn't even know who I was. It was like, who is this person? Just like insane is the only way I can describe how I was on the pill. So then I tried the Nuva ring, and that I just didn't like having to put something in me and like take it out. And it was just like, I didn't like it. And then the IUD, the cramps I had with the IUD were unlike anything I have ever felt in my whole entire life. From pretty much the second I got it put in, they always say like, oh, it hurts so bad. Like I saw stars. I'm like, okay, like what does that even mean? I saw stars. Like I almost blacked out. It was so painful to get put in. And then from the second I walked out of the office, I would randomly get these insane cramps that would take my breath away, and I'd have to like stop what I was doing. And I was like, okay, this just because it was just put in, like it's going to go away, but it never went away. I would just get these debilitating, sharp cramps, and I bled so much. I cannot believe I didn't bleed out. Like it felt like I was bleeding out when I was on my period, like how much I bled. It was insane. So I was like, this is this is not working. And then the Implanon was basically constant spotting, just like all the time. I mean, it's hard to have any sort of sex life or any sort of just regular life when you don't know what's happening and you're basically constantly bleeding a little bit. And yeah, I was like, these are obviously not working. And it always felt like these synthetic hormones, like I shouldn't be doing this. Like in the back of my mind, I knew that it just like, it wasn't right. So that's when I was finally like, find a better way. I'm not doing this anymore.
I mean, it's always frustrating to hear these stories. And with the copper IUD, I always say the copper IUD for women who have a good experience and who love it, they really love it. So they're ambassadors and cheerleaders for it. And if it works, that's great because it's a non-hormonal method, right? But part of the reason that they created the implants that are infused with the progestin, like the progestin releasing IUDs, is because the copper IUD is known to make periods heavier and to make cramping worse. So if you already had heavy periods and they were painful at one point, I feel like someone should have told you, maybe you're not the best candidate for this particular method of birth control, because those side effects are kind of right in line with like what's most common on the copper IUD. And then with the implants, and so the implants are progestin releasing, and then the IUDs, the hormonal IUDs, are progestin releasing. And the most common effect of these progestin releasing options is the spotting, the irregular bleeding, especially within the first 6 months. And I don't know if women are adequately prepped for that, or like, I just don't know if there's enough care and attention spent on just telling women what to expect from these options.
Yeah, I agree with that. It feels like every single doctor, it's like they're not allowed to actually really go over the side effects that are I feel like more likely to happen than not. It's like they feel like if they tell you what really might happen, then you're not going to want to take it. And so they really just, they're like, it's totally safe. It's totally normal. Everything's going to be fine. Or if you tell them your concerns, they're like, no, it's not from that. It's got to be from something else. And I'm not sure what the reason is, but not one doctor gave me a real breakdown of the side effects and how likely they were. And when I told them about them, no one was like, yeah, you're right. That could be from the birth control. It was always something else. So that's super frustrating for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's because again, what you experienced, especially with the last two, especially with the implant and with the copper IUD, those are the most common side effects of those two types of birth control. So, but I digress. We could talk about it all day. Obviously, this is a systemic problem with our system. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why we're here doing something different. So share a little bit. You mentioned your experience when you discovered fertility awareness. So share a little bit about that. And like I said, I've had so similar conversations with so many women over the years and it just breaks my heart that so many women have to, go through what you did, like try this, try that, try the other thing, go through so much frustration. And I've had conversations with women that were like at their wits' end, like I'm trying to prevent pregnancy. I've literally tried everything. I did everything I was told. They told me to do this thing and this thing, and they're under the impression that there's no other alternative. And that feeling of like, there's nothing else. I just guess I have to go back on one of these hormones. Like, which one was the least bad, right? So share with us what your experience was like, and I suppose how that made a change, because obviously you jumped into FAMM because not only did you want to use it personally, but you also wanted to share that with your clients. So share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I was unbelievably uneducated about my body, like to the point where I literally thought ovulation happened after your period. Like I did not understand our bodies, our hormones, anything at all. Even when I was on birth control, if I had unprotected sex, which is the whole point of birth control, I would like freak out and use plan B, which is like not good. So yes, I was very, very uneducated. So listening to your book, as I said, completely blew my mind. Like I wanted to get on the rooftops and like shout from them to like every woman to hear like this stuff about our bodies and like how incredible they are. And I just like was immediately hooked. Like I could not get enough of FAMM. And so I actually got taking charge of your fertility, because I think I went onto Facebook and I looked for like FAMM groups and like how to learn, and a lot of people recommended taking charge of your fertility. So that was the first method I ever used. And then I was just like so in it and so obsessed. I wanted to become a practitioner or an instructor. So I went to Sympto Pro, and they offered a instructor course. It wasn't very well done. I mean, nothing to them. It's probably more me. Everything was reading, and it was all a lot of information kind of all over the place. And I don't do well in that kind of learning environment. So I never actually ended up finishing it. But I was still just like, this is what I want to do. Like, I cannot stop thinking about FAMM. I cannot stop telling anyone that will give me 2.5 seconds to talk about it. Like, I want to be teaching women this because of how much it's changed my life and how much it's empowered me. And that's how I found your course. And I'm just like so beyond stoked to just put this out in the world and teach women this, because there's literally nothing more empowering than FAMM.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it gives options when before you didn't think you had any. So, I mean, share with us what your experience was like adapting to charting. Were you using it as your primary birth control method? Like, tell us a little bit about how you were able to put it into your own life. I'm curious.
I did use it as my primary birth control method. At this point, I had gotten the implant out. And I think, I don't know, because I was just so into it and so just wanting to learn so much that I believed in my body. Like I believed in the method because it all like it made sense. Like it is biology. It's how our bodies work. And so I actually found it quite easy to adapt to it and take the or use the mucus and the temps. I will say for the first like 2 years, I had no egg white mucus or no like super fertile mucus. And I would actually ovulate around day 11 for like the first 2 years. And I would often have like 15 to 17-day luteal phases. But now I'm more in the normal range. But yeah, I was so into it that I found it very easy to adapt and learn. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, as you said, it's especially for the women who I've worked with over the years who had such a negative experience with birth control, it can often be like a ray of light because it's like, you don't have to rely on these things anymore. And one of the things that you had mentioned as well was like when we were talking beforehand was your experience with the medical system. I mean, in your case, even though you had some challenges with your period, it sounds as though, for the most part, you were using birth control. Well, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like for the most part, you were using it for birth control. Maybe share a little bit about what your experience has been like with some of the women that you've worked with, because as we know, women are put on birth control for a variety of different reasons and often not even for contraception. But yeah, am I right in your case, you were actually using it for birth control, or were you ever using it for any type of issue?
No, I was always using it for birth control. I never even thought that it could help me with anything else because it seemed to make everything worse. I couldn't imagine trying to take it for something to make something better. So yeah, the only time I was really taking it was for the purpose of birth control. And as I said, or we were talking earlier, I do work in the medical system as a surgical technologist. So I work with GYN surgeons all the time, and we see IUDs being put in all the time and take a lot of uteruses out and a lot of tube tying. And I do struggle working in those rooms because I do try to talk to the doctors about FAMM. And I have yet to meet one that says, yeah, it works until it doesn't. And that enrages me that they clearly know nothing about the method, and it's probably a rhythm method type thinking, and they're not even interested to hear about it. And that's what frustrates me the most, and why I'm kind of trying to get out of that system, because I want to be that in between person that says, hey, there are other ways before maybe these more extreme ways, so let's try this first and let's see if it works for you.
Attention women's health professionals, the next round of FAMM is just around the corner. Classes are starting toward the end of October. FAMM is the perfect program for busy women's health professionals who want to offer fertility awareness charting support in their practice. FAMM cuts out all the fluff and only focuses on what you need to serve your clients better. Each module, homework assignment, in-class training, and chart review session is there for a reason. Where will you be 9 months from now? With a FAMM certification, you'll have a brand new skill set that will allow you to use the menstrual cycle as a diagnostic tool and vital sign in your practice. Your confidence in analyzing and interpreting menstrual cycle charts will be at a level you can't even imagine today. And you'll have a brand new offering in your business that will allow you to reach more clients. This knowledge is truly life-changing. Transform your practice in 9 months. You won't regret it. Join us this year in FAMM. Head over to fertilityfriday.com/FAMMlive to apply today. That's fertilityfriday.com/FAMMLIVE. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's challenging where the systems collide, I guess you could say, where when you learn about it a little bit, I've had to take a step back over all the years and kind of think about where I stand, because I think when you first discover all this information, it's just it can feel so egregious. The doctors can feel like they're just awful human beings. And I don't think that that's what's really happening. I don't think that they're awful human beings. But if we learn a little bit about the medical system, you quickly discover that doctors do, generally speaking, receive very little, if any, education about fertility awareness-based methods. And that is ultimately the root of the problem, where in kind of standard medical training, if you're lucky, your doctor may have received an hour of education around fertility awareness-based methods. And you can imagine that in that hour, they were not told about how effective they were and what a great alternative they were. They were likely discouraged from it. And after speaking to a number of doctors on the podcast, what I gathered, and it makes sense because if you think about what they're recommending, doctors tend toward methods that have basically no or very little input by the user. So to say that in English, they tend toward methods that are the set it and forget it. So they tend towards the long acting methods such as the IUD or the implant, where they just place it that one time and then the efficacy is based on the device. Because if you have very little user involvement, so if you don't even have to remember to take the pill every day, then you're going to have, in most cases, a higher degree of efficacy. And so it seems as though the medical systems prioritize efficacy over all of the other factors. But when you're dealing with like a human woman, efficacy is important, but it's not necessarily the only factor, to the exclusion of all other factors. Like in your case, you wanted an effective method, but you did not want to bleed every day. And you certainly did not want to have pain to leave you doubled over or bleeding where you actually felt like you were bleeding out. So efficacy needed to be on the table, but it couldn't be to the exclusion of all the other factors. And I feel like that is where the conversation breaks down, because with medical professionals, they look at fertility awareness-based methods. Now, fertility awareness-based methods are on the other end of that spectrum because they are user dependent. Like it's a completely user dependent method versus these methods that are entirely based on just them placing it and it working. So yeah, I understand your frustration. I also like to have that conversation around it. You work around this environment, you work around these medical professionals. What do you think is the solution?
I don't know. I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying. And I know that they're not educated on it whatsoever, even in the slightest. I wish that they could just be a little more open-minded, because there are going to be women that say, I'm not going back on HCs. So then they're left with what? Nothing. So it would be nice if they could at least be open-minded enough to say to those women, okay, if you're going to do nothing, like, here are these other options and here are ways that you can learn them. I'm not saying every doctor needs to be able to teach FAMM. I mean, I think that's completely unreasonable. They have other very important things they need to be doing. They're already totally overwhelmed. So to have kind of a relationship with maybe a FAMM educator, practitioner would be incredible. And honestly, that's what I'm trying to find within these doctors. Like, how can we work together to help more women? But unfortunately, at this point, it's just a lot of poo-pooing, saying, no, that doesn't work, instead of saying, wow, that's like really interesting. Like, let's have more of a conversation about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's just really helpful to understand where doctors are coming from, because if you don't understand, then it just becomes frustrating. So I always have silly analogies for everything. My analogy for this would be like going to Burger King and getting mad when they don't change your oil. And you're serious. So like now you're on TikTok because someone took a video of this crazy person standing in front of the till. And you're like, no, you're going to change my oil today. And the woman's like, no, you're at Burger King, you crazy person. Yeah. Can you order a burger or get out of the line? And it's like, no, you're going to change my oil today. And I think this is the mindset we kind of have to have when we're approaching our conventionally trained medical professionals, where we have this historical like fantasy in our minds that medical doctors can just do everything and they know everything. They know about nutrition. Like we think that these doctors know everything. And even that in and of itself, if I'm trying to be sympathetic to the doctors, that puts undue pressure on them. Now, it might come across as like I'm giving them so much leeway, but I have had a lot of time to think about this. And really and truly, it is totally unrealistic. The expectations we have about doctors being able to know everything and do everything and be good at everything. But there's also another end to that, like a double-edged sword. So there's another edge. And the other edge is that doctors aren't known for being the most humble individuals. They're not known for admitting when they don't know things. They're known for having big egos and pretending to know things that they don't, and kind of poo-pooing over things that they don't really understand. And because they have so much weight in our world, you can have a client who goes to a doctor and comes back completely confused and stressed out because the doctor told her that, it was only a matter of time before she was going to get pregnant because fertility awareness-based methods don't work and blah, 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 blah. And that individual we give them so much power. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that we have the solution to this problem, in the sense that we're not going to just change all these medical doctors overnight, because this is the system that they were trained in. They were trained in the system that does not encourage fertility awareness-based methods as a protocol because we're still in the 40s or whatever, thinking that fertility awareness-based methods are the same as the rhythm method, they don't work and all that kind of stuff. And even when you look in the research, you have to have a keen eye to understand what they do. Sometimes the research will show these really low efficacy rates for fertility awareness-based methods, but they're literally lumping in all the methods together. They might be lumping in women who use charting apps with no knowledge of anything. And so they're not really defining what fertility awareness-based methods are, even like, you know, and the newer studies, and I know there's a lot of amazing kind of fertility awareness warriors and a lot of people in the medical field. There's a lot of doctors now, a lot more doctors that are being trained in fertility awareness-based methods that are putting out really solid research. So this is good news. So we do have really solid research coming out. We do have educators, medical doctors, scientists, researchers who are putting out, okay, fertility awareness-based methods is an umbrella for all of these different types of methods. We have mucus methods, we have symptothermal methods, we have X, Y, Z, all these different kinds of methods. So I do think that we're making very, very slow progress. But, you know, back to your point about what do we do? I really think that it starts with education. I think we need to start educating our clients. Like they need to know not to go to Burger King and ask for oil changes. Like we really need to start understanding that when we're going to our medical doctors, we need to understand what allopathic medicine is, a pill for every ill. We need to understand that that's their modality. And we need to start recognizing that we shouldn't be expecting them to do things that are not within their wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. Because I mean, hey, I mean, if you want to challenge me, like go to your doctor's office and try to convince them that fertility awareness or the methods are the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then when you come out of the office crying, we can still talk.
Totally.
Know that you're not. I've come out of doctor's offices crying too, because like it's sometimes so hard just to get heard, just to get your point across. And I really wish it wasn't that way. And then what I will say is, I know that there are some doctors listening. We know that there are amazing physicians and practitioners out there. We know that there are amazing doctors and other medical professionals who have taken the time to learn about fertility awareness-based methods. And you are the hope. So we are not trying to slight all doctors as a category, but we have to be honest and we can't pretend like a lot of women haven't had a lot of negative experiences in medical doctors' offices. So if you are a medical professional, you are listening, you are our hope. We love you. And, you know, keep doing your thing and hopefully it'll rub off and eventually the, you know, profession will be a little bit different. Just had to put that out there because sometimes I get like, I post something about doctors that's like, I'm a doctor. I'm like, well, but I still stand behind my comment because I just have spent my whole life talking to women who've like had these awful experiences.
They're definitely the minority.
Yeah. But we love you guys.
Yes.
And keep doing your thing. Yes. Okay, there's one thing I want to go back to. I know I'm like jumping around here. When you shared about your experience, I'm like literally going back to your first period. But when you shared your experience of your first period and you mentioned that your mom and yourself didn't have a conversation about it at all. And you said that at some point pads appeared in the bathroom and then you never talked about it again. And you're not the only one who I've spoken to who had an experience like that. I was just reflecting on that because as we were going through our conversation and you kind of started with, you know, I had no background, no knowledge of my body. I was kind of starting from scratch, you know, and no wonder. I don't know. I just wanted to go back there because was that tough for you? Was it difficult or was it just how it was?
It was just how it was. It just like seemed fine. Like I have a very good relationship with my mom and my parents. It just, I don't know. That's just something that was never really talked about, like personal stuff like that. Even kind of to this day, like we don't talk about super in-depth personal stuff. So it definitely didn't bother me. It just seemed kind of normal, I guess, because that was just what I grew up in. Yeah, I don't know. I love my mom.
Of course. I mean, I just ask because it just, there's so many different ways that this comes about. I mean, I've had conversations with women where it was their older sister that shepherded them through that. And women who didn't even know what periods were and they started bleeding and thought they were going to die, especially when they started bleeding earlier, younger in age. So I find it fascinating just to hear the different experiences that we've had. It speaks also to you because you did know what was going on and you did know what to do.
I think because I had two best friends that were my neighbors, and I think we all got our period at the same time. So I did know about the period. I don't know how. I don't know if it was just like my friends, or I might have had like a book, like one of those books written by like whoever made American Dolls about like going through puberty. Maybe that seems familiar too. So I think I did know about it. It just wasn't a direct conversation with my mom. So maybe she did buy me that book in like preparation, and maybe I did read it, because I definitely didn't think I was dying. I definitely knew like, oh, this is my period, you know? But yeah.
Yeah. It's just interesting to reflect on these things, I think.
Totally.
Well, and as we start wrapping up, I want to ask you a couple questions. So one question I want to ask is for someone who is, tuning into this episode, they're women's health practitioner of one kind or another. They're thinking about jumping into FAMM. Like, what would you want them to know, given that you are nearly through your experience?
Definitely do it. I remember one of the first lessons we did in this program, you talked about how you kind of had like imposter syndrome about like, how could you teach women about FAMM, like who had already been tracking, like what could you possibly teach them? I was like, yeah, like what are you going to teach me? I've been doing FAMM for like 4 years. I already know all about mucus. And then like, here's the mucus categories. Oh my God, what are these? Like, it blew my mind. Like, I am so fine to be, I was completely humbled. Even if you've been doing FAMM or teaching FAMM for years with other methods or whatever, like this program is so in depth, and it's so much more than just about FAMM. It's about like just health in general. Like there's so many things that we can learn from our cycles. Like, as you say, it's the fifth vital sign, just like the color of our mucus or how much our temps rise, like can tell us so many more things about our bodies. And it just really opens a window to so many things. So if you're on the fence, like do it. You will learn so much. It's absurd.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That is awesome that you shared that, because that is definitely something that I thought of when I was first teaching. I remember the first time I had a client who, she signed up for one of my programs and she had been charting her cycles for 3 years. And I thought, wow, 3 years, what can I teach her? But it turned out a lot was the answer to that question. So interesting also that you had experience. You had already taken most of a fertility awareness educator program. And as you know, we do have other members in the program who have graduated from fertility awareness educator programs. And when those practitioners jump into the program, they're definitely thinking in the conversations, like the pre-conversations we have, they're definitely thinking like, well, I'm not going to learn anything about the fertility awareness part, but I want to learn the other stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But they always learn all kinds of stuff that they didn't know, because at the end of the day, it's just been a long time. It's just, I've worked with a lot of people and there's just a lot to know. Like, this is welcome to my rabbit hole. I always say that, but legit. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciate you sharing that, because I didn't know that was your experience until you just shared it. So that was fun. All right. And then another question for you. So you're not yet, like, we're still at the precipice, like you're almost finished and all the things, and, but given your experience in the program, like, where do you think you're going to go with this? So this question is really interesting to me these days, because it's been really fun for me to see what our practitioners are doing with all this information. So you don't have to have the answers, but I am curious as to what you've been thinking of and where you're thinking of taking all this.
Yeah, so I started a small business, a little women's wellness business called She is the Moon. And I would love to offer this as part of my business to women. My biggest passion is to bring back your like bodily autonomy. Like, don't give your power to doctors or to someone else for them to tell you what's wrong with you. Like, you live in your body, you feel the things you feel, you observe the things you observe. So nobody can tell you how you're feeling. Because a lot of women like, oh, well, the doctor told me this, but I don't feel this. But they're still going to listen to the doctor because they're a doctor. Like, I've been there before many times. So this is definitely something I'm wanting to offer in my practice, to just like spread the word like this. I'm so excited about all this. And I just want to teach anyone who will let me.
Be the change you want to see in the world. I swear, those are words that I live by, because I'm impatient and I'm not interested in waiting until all of the men who are apparently in charge decide that this is important, because obviously it's not important enough. for that to start doing anything about it. So I'm really excited. Like I said, that has been one of the most rewarding parts of creating the FAMM program, has just been to be able to sit back and watch what our practitioners do with this information. And it's also really shown me, like when I first started the podcast, I just wanted to pay megaphone. I was like, you know what I mean? Like I just wanted to put the information out there and share. And what has come out of it is really astounding to me. I would not have thought that this is where it would have led. And what is the most exciting piece of it is how much deeper of an impact, because now we're like creating an army.
Mm-hmm.
A FAMM army. We're literally creating a FAMM army.
I want to be part of that army.
Yes. I love it. Like I said, it goes beyond my wildest dreams. But at the end of the day, I believe that's how you make change. Like legitimately, that's how you make change at the grassroots level. And I believe it already has made change, which is even more exciting. So, thanks for indulging me. I'm getting real sentimental, I guess you could say, as I approach my 10-year anniversary. That's why I keep talking about it. The podcast has been here for that long. And it's really been an interesting year for me to reflect on what has come out of essentially my basement, because that's where we are. And you're at the beginning of your journey. So I'm excited to see where it takes you as well.
So I cannot wait.
Well, so for anybody who is wanting to learn a little bit more about you and what you do and where they can find you, let us know all the places, the socials, the interwebs, all the things.
So I'm located in Marin County, California, which is in the Bay Area, specifically in the city of Novato. That's where my practice is. I also do Maya abdominal therapy. So if that's something you're interested in, you can visit my website at www.sheisthemoon.org. And then anyone who is interested in possibly learning FAMM from me, you can do that. We can do that over the magical internet now. So anywhere in the world, I can work with you. You can also visit my website for that. And then I have an Instagram. She is the Moon Marin, Marin. And that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure to link all of those places in the show notes for anyone who's on the go. And I just want to thank you so much for being here, Emmy. This has been just a great conversation. I always say that even though we were together for almost all year, I feel like I always get to learn so much when I do these episodes and just go deeper into your story. So I really appreciate you for being here and for sharing. And I know that your episode and your experiences will inspire. I mean, also possibly like piss off a little, but also inspire, right? The challenges that we go through are so frustrating, but at least with this medium, it allows us to share. So all the other women who've gone through the pill scenarios and all the things know that they're not alone. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is like mind blowing to be here because I've listened to like every episode. Like I can't believe I'm going to be on. I'm like starstruck.
Amazing. Well, we're so thrilled to have you. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please share it with a friend. You'll find the show notes page for today's episode over at fertilityfriday.com/543. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode with Emmy. I feel like there were so many interesting insights in our conversation today. I think that her experience, I've heard similar experiences over the years with having very little conversation around menstruation when it first started. I think what was really interesting to me was that she didn't really have a conversation at all. The pads just kind of showed up in the bathroom, and that was that. And it just really speaks to this opportunity that we have as women's health practitioners to fill that gap and start helping women to connect much deeper with their bodies. After all, if you are a woman of reproductive age, menstruation is just a part of this experience that we have. And it's something that really, menstruation, fertility, managing our fertility, if you're in relationships with men and you're sexually active, if you're trying to have babies, if you have had babies and now you don't want to have any more babies, it is always an ever-present and highly significant aspect of our lives. That one of my past guests, Laura Owen, she refers to this as reproductive labor, all of the energy that goes into managing our reproduction as women, this unique experience that we have. And it's such a profound, huge aspect of our lives. And to think that so many of us don't really even understand how our bodies work or how all of these things come together. And so if you're a women's health practitioner and, you're really into this stuff, you're listening to my podcast, you've read books about these topics, you've probably already noticed that the majority of your clients don't know as much as you do, right? They just, even if we're in the rabbit hole, and this is something that I've started to talk about a little bit more often because I've done a lot of interviews lately, because I've been promoting Real Food for Fertility, right? The new book with Lily Nichols. And I've just had a lot of conversations about this. And what I find is that when I'm speaking with like-minded people, we kind of forget that the majority of people who are not in our little bubble here, who are not in our, social media feeds and seeing all this cool stuff all the time, the majority of people, just regular, everyday people, still have no idea what's going on. And I can think of a recent interview when I was asked about that. Someone asked me something like, so given that you've been in the field for so long, have you seen a shift? And do you think that it's different now and this is more common knowledge? And I had to say, not really. I mean, I do see the huge change that has happened in the field. The field, the visibility, the number of women who know about fertility awareness, the number of women teaching it, the number of women talking about it, it has expanded just immensely. So absolutely, I think that there's been a huge, huge change that way. But do I think that we've hit critical mass? No, I don't. I don't actually think that we've reached a point where the average woman still, knows anything about it. I think more people know about it, but I still don't think that it has trickled down so that your everyday average woman has this information. So regardless of how much progress we've made, which is amazing and I'm thrilled about, and I think it's amazing and wonderful. So I'm not downplaying it at all, but I do think that there's an opportunity to grow even more. And I think that for those of us who are wanting this information and knowledge to become mainstream, if we really think about what mainstream would mean, we have a long way to go. So as a women's health practitioner, I feel like if you are not somehow actively doing this to a high level, to a professional degree, if you haven't got your education to the point that you are confident that you are providing accurate and complete information to your clients on this topic, there is just such an immense opportunity to grow and to really work towards offering this to your clients. And of course, this is one of the reasons why we've created the FAMM program, the Fertility Awareness Mastery Mentorship, because we are absolutely obsessed with getting there, with having the everyday regular woman knowing about her cycle, understanding fertility awareness, not because I think that every single woman needs to use this as their primary birth control method, but we all deserve to know how our bodies work, how our cycles work, what a normal cycle looks like, and have some tools and skills to be able to work towards achieving that optimal hormone balance so that we don't have to continue suffering through all kinds of period issues and suffering through birth control side effects if the hormonal birth control options aren't agreeing with us. It's just time to change this narrative and to have women like you and me, everyday women, enjoy a better quality of life due to their, improving their relationship with menstruation. So, thanks for listening to my TED Talk, but I just felt inspired to share some thoughts on this today. So with that said, I hope that you have a wonderful weekend, whenever you're tuning into the show. And of course, as always, until next time, be well and happy charting. And that's a wrap. If you're loving the FAMM research series or our FAMM practitioner series, then I know you'll love our Fertility Awareness Mastery Mentorship Program. It's a 9-month immersive experience that will completely transform the way you work with clients, allowing you to not only teach fertility awareness to your clients, but to use the menstrual cycle as a vital sign and diagnostic tool in your women's health practice. Our next class starts on October 22nd, so there's still time for you to reserve your spot. There's no other program like this offered anywhere. Transform your practice in 9 months. Head over to fertilityfriday.com/FAMMlive to apply now. That's fertilityfriday.com/FAMMLIVE.